Hi, my name is Gavin Limsheng. Today I'll be presenting my architecture project proposal, the Nerang River Indigenous Cultural Education Center for the World Architecture Student Award 2022. But before I get into this presentation, I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects towards the traditional custodians of the lands in Australia and pay my respects towards the elders both past, present and future for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes in these lands. I would also like to thank my project coordinator Sean Lim and my tutor Paul Sanders for guiding me through this design process towards a finalized proposal with very sensitive parts that allowed me to carry on and understand different aspects of the difficulties of this project. So the reason I did this project is because I come from a multicultural country and I understood the real meaning of being inclusive in a multicultural country where people really respect each other and are together as one. And coming here, I gained a lot of knowledge about the culture of Australia, the indigenous culture of Australia more specifically. And as much as it is interesting, unfortunately, it's not as knowledgeable. People don't know much about it, so it's only awareness but not knowledge, unfortunately. So my inspiration came from that, and I really wanted to work on a project where I can really give back to Australia through the knowledge that I've gained here and understand that it is very important to implement things into architecture that allows others to gain from it in a macro level. During my research about Aboriginal people, their culture and traditions, etc., I was able to find something quite significant that really touched me. It was a lost Aboriginal language found by Patricia O'Connor in the mid 1980s, and it was a language that she could understand, but no one knew about, even the indigenous people of Australia. So this really touched me about how culture can be lost and people can be revived, because what she did was actually go to university and try to get help by through different people to try repurpose this language and pass the knowledge of this new or lost language. And this language is called the Ugambe. It is located in the Ugambe region of southeast Queensland, and it's quite sensitive as people didn't actually know about a lot of these culture, languages, history in this region, but they actually were neighboring this region. So that really pushed me towards actually doing a project where I'm able to do what they call the passing of knowledge. And what I understood here is awareness is not knowledge. And I wanted to create a project proposal that brings the pass of knowledge. And Patricia O'Connor actually inspired me a lot through what she did by opening a museum. So this awareness that she brought through this museum actually helped a lot of indigenous people to refine or rediscover their lost language, their lost roots, their lost culture and traditions. So for me, it was very inspiring in a way where it pushed me to create and design a space where people can not only be aware of their history and their roots, but also re-bring it to practice and educate themselves so much that they can actually re-practice it in the old ways and showcase it to the world and to the other indigenous people of Australia and give them hope that their culture is actually significant to other people and show the beauty of his unique culture. So without further ado, let's hop into the main presentation of his project. So the selection of a site was quite a crucial phase of the design process, as I had to satisfy a set of criteria that would allow the project to be relevant and significant in a way where it would satisfy and achieve the goals that I'm trying to set for this project proposal. And one of those criteria was exposure that allows foreigners as well as people of Australia, but most importantly Aboriginal people, to intentionally as much as unintentionally discover more about the Aboriginal culture. Sometimes people unintentionally discover a lot by being in the right location, and it allows them to learn new things that they would never have thought of. But most importantly, I had to ensure that the location creates meaningful connections to the Aboriginal people. Aboriginal people live in nature secluded from dense populations since they are very welded to their natural lifestyle. Therefore, I had to find a location that connects them to the nature while being close to exposure, which was very challenging. Another challenging criteria was accessibility to the location, as Indigenous people often live in inaccessible places in the wild. Luckily, more and more Aboriginals are trying to adapt to the modern lifestyle but still keep their old ways of living. So those criteria focus on creating relative connections to the Aboriginal people, such as nature, allowing universal access for other people, mostly access to the location with ease by public transport vehicles and footpaths. The location that I chose is in Surfers Paradise, Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, by the Nerang River, which means shovel-nosed shark. It is a river previously named the River Barrow, but changed by the Surveyor General Thomas Mitchell as a sign of respect to the Indigenous people. Local Aboriginals calls it the River Mogonbin. Surfers Paradise is known to be Australia's premier touristic location with constant movement and activities whether it's day or night. It attracts more than 10 million visitors annually, with domestic tourists outnumbering international tourists. Therefore, this region was the right place for this proposal, as it is located in a green area separated from a busy city. In addition, the site is located in an area in which a framework called Culture Strategy 2023 was implemented. This framework specifically aims to revive the cultural side of Gold Coast with goals which prioritize on elevating Indigenous heritage and culture, but also to create local job opportunities, attracting local artists and cultural enterprises. As the site is located close to the busy Surfers Paradise, there are several short distance accessibility points only minutes away from a main highway called the Bundle Road. Public transport is only a few minutes walk away, with public footpath crossing the site to a nearby lake called Evandale Lake. And since the site is located by the river, this allows Indigenous people who are currently educating themselves at the center to have a more meaningful connection with water and nature in general, because where they live is actually in the wild and they usually live near a source of water. So this gives an opportunity to create a design that allows connection between land and water. The Ugambe region is also adjoined to other indigenous territories called Wangangerubura, Munanjali, and Komameri, which are locals to the Queensland state. And this gave an opportunity for my center to educate more about these other cultures and Aboriginal people as well. To design the space, I also followed a set of sustainable criteria which allows for a healthier space with minimized negative impacts on its surroundings and increase the positive aspects of a space. Some of those criteria are to create a connected and livable community where people have universal access to public transport and different spaces around the site. To create a prosperous community where people understand and want to grow together, an inclusive and healthy community where people feel welcome with each other and want to live healthily together, a climate resilient community where people understand the negative impacts of global warming and other things that they do to live and fight against it, a water sensitive community so people can understand how much water is being used and consumed so they can consume in a more essential way, a biodiverse community where the space can allow for new wildlife to be attracted and new habitats to be created in those spaces, a low carbon community where a space can be created by minimizing the impact on environment, a low waste community where people understand that they need to consume essentially, where they don't waste as much when they live their daily life. When designing the space, I wanted to create an environment where Indigenous people feel connected to their roots through modernity. To do that, I researched about the lifestyle of Aboriginals, and I found that they are amazing artists who create their own music, art paintings, and traditional dance performances. This allowed them to connect to nature, in which they find natural ways to create their arts. One of their instruments is the DJ radio, which is made from a handmade wooden pipe where they use blowing techniques to provide music. Their paintings are very specific and illustratively tell stories of a culture. The paintings are made through natural clay and sand, which create something called ochre with various pigmentation that allows for earthy colored paintings. As I find the relations between the use of natural source to provide their arts, I realize this creates a connection with what they use to create things, and I wanted the space to be coherent with their ways of being creative. I decided to use natural warm tones and maximize naturally sourced material throughout my project. I was inspired by a local Aboriginal artist under the name of Catherine Marshall Nakamura, which used ochre and her natural ochre tones to create her paintings and tell stories. So I decided to follow her color palette and really implement it throughout my building and landscape space. Of 5 variations of colored earth, which are very soothing and provide a feeling of togetherness with nature. They feel very coherent with natural surrounding, which ultimately create a welcoming environment, which is the reason why I decided to use her color palette. To minimize the carbon footprint for the project, I decided to use recycled colored comb cork for the internal walls, which is a very good insulating material. I also used locally sourced recycled string bark timber and earthen floor for the flooring. As for the external walls, I use ram earth, which is sourced from excavation for this project and other local sources of earth. Ram earth follows the same tones as Catherine Marshall Nakamura's painting, so there won't be requirement for any painting. This really creates a connection with the place on which the space will be built on and reduce the need for concrete or other man-made materials. For part of the external circulations, I use locally sourced recycled aggregate. The spaces that I wanted to implement are the most significant part of the project and had to be thought through. As they are a space of Indigenous education, they had to follow a hierarchy of the most important traditions of Aboriginal people. Those traditions are to learn stories through various ways such as paintings, dancing, music, language, and history. Therefore, I wanted to create 6 main spaces. First one being the art space where Aboriginal people will learn Indigenous paintings. Second one is the music space where they will learn to create Indigenous music. Third one is the outdoor dance space to learn traditional Indigenous dances. It is the only outdoor learning space as it is important for Aboriginals to feel connected to the natural ground and the sky while dancing. There is also an indoor dance space for severe weathers. The library space is to learn about language, history, and Indigenous culture. And fifth is the most important spaces out of all, the performance space. It is very important for this space to be outdoor, as this is how Aboriginal people express their unique culture and traditions. 6 is the art gallery where students will showcase their storytelling artwork. Finally, there will be a restaurant where Aboriginal people and other people will get to try Aboriginal food. There are also other outdoor spaces with universal access where people will get to enjoy during their stay or visit or learning time at the center. Before going into the design development of the education center, there were some specific goals that I wanted to achieve. First one, the buildings had to be coherent with the natural topography of a site, like a natural river flowing down a slope with natural curvatures. The building was to be designed in a way where it forms part of a land with enough height to hide the concrete buildings behind it from the river view. I wanted the building to be a journey from water to earth, since I wanted to signify the importance of water and earth for the Aboriginals. Therefore, I wanted it to have a trafficable green roof which connects earth to water. The building was to be designed in a way where the occupants would face the most natural side of the site, which is the riverside. The space had to be oriented in a way that predominantly allows views on the Nerang River rather than buildings across the river. The building is to have ease of access from different main public accessibility points. In the first developmental diagram, I used the views onto the river from the central point of the site and projected lines from the natural river edge towards the site to ultimately create 5 centralities where the lines would meet. This resulted into the perfect location and orientation to view onto the Nerang River. In the second diagram, I added a line that follows the natural flow of the surrounding of the 5 centralities down to the lowest point of the slope on the proposed site. The length of the line created a barrier from the northern and western buildings towards the most natural part of the site. From this development, I obtained the first footprint of the building's shape. On the third diagram, I offsetted the line to create a boundary between the internal and external spaces. The fourth diagram depicts the application of architectural spatial considerations for the main spaces that I would allocate. This development allows to apply the area required for the different spaces to be functional and accommodate the occupants required. It also creates a better view onto the river. The dotted line shows the new boundary of a building. Going into the fifth diagram, I use the site context to determine different accessibility points such as the entrance and the circulations towards the different main centralities. This development resulted into 2 cross-through, 2 main entrances throughout the building shown in yellow lines and circulations through the site. In the fifth diagram, I designed the internal boundaries using each space requirements and design considerations. To develop further, I had to apply new accessibility circulations to the internal spaces. The 5 circles depict some of the main outdoor spaces within the site already. The 7th diagram shows further developments with considerations of the updated modifications. It involved recessing some external walls to create better space for the outdoor performance space, the restaurant, the outdoor space, and circulations. The western side of the building has a full height opening to allow view onto the sky and allow more natural light onto the building. In the final development, I applied the vertical structures of the buildings by projecting uniformly spaced lines from the centralities. The linear intersection with the external walls of the building provided the vertical structures required for the building. I decided it would have to be on the inside of the building to make it look more coherent with the outside. Jumping onto the exploded axonometric view, we can see different hierarchies of structure that this building has. Starting from the top, we can see the trafficable green roof, which is actually made of concrete to support the green area above it. Going down, we can see the concrete structure of a building with concrete columns and concrete beam, which is supported along the edge of external walls. Going down, we can see the suspended ceiling, which is not any structural element, but because of different components that are added to insulate the sound and increase the appeal of a design within the building space, I decided to have a structural ceiling that will support those components. The facade of the external walls are made of rammed earth and full height curtain wall with louvers to be able to control the natural daylight during the hot seasons. Going down one more, there is the slab and the internal spaces. This consists of the earthen floor and the internal walls, which is partly made of rammed earth and also concrete, with the library being insulated with the comcoke walls. And going down one more, you can see all the external spaces that surround the building, but without the building. In the northwest is the footpath from the public transport going towards the first main entrance, with another footpath going alongside the building towards the second main entrance. The first main entrance is made of full height glass doors to allow natural light within the reception of the lounge area. As you look across the entrance, you would see the horizon of the Nerang River. On the northern side of the building is the art exhibition space with a personal storage room, followed by a services room with external access only. The building consists of 3 vertical access with 2 stairways, one on the northwest side with a lift next to it, and the other on the southeast of the building. The flooring of the building is mostly made of earthen floor with elevated deckings in some areas, as shown as the floor plan. Across the main entrance are some full-height sliding glass doors that open up to the main outdoor performance space. The outdoor performance space is surrounded by rammed earth benches for Indigenous events. Along the full-height glass doors is a concrete footpath which provides access into the building from any eastern side of the building. Back on the western side of the building is the library with color comcoke walls for added sound insulation. The walls of the library follow the external curvature of the building, providing an expanded view when entering the space. Across the library is the restaurant with raised internal deckings which allow for a better view onto the river. On the most southern side of the building is the indoor dance learning space with 2 access points to the outdoor dance learning space, a space when students will feel connected to the earth while learning Aboriginal dances. Going towards the second main entrance is the only road access point with an outdoor exhibition space across the road. A place different type of arts can be showcased. Using one of the 2 vertical access points next to the reception, we have access to the first floor where the music learning space is allocated. It is away from the noises of the ground floor with extra assistance with sound insulating wooden buttons suspended on the ceilings. The walls within the music learning space is the continuity of the rammed earth walls and comcoke walls from the library. Towards the eastern side of the building, crossing through the concrete bridge, is the art space which has a full-height curtain wall, provided full exposure to the outside views, a place where students can practice their art while being connected to the nature. When we go towards the river side of the building, there is a timber footpath across through a series of timber tunnels which resembles traditional Aboriginal shelters and go towards a large circular jetty. Next to the jetty are elevated play spaces for students to interact during their recreational time. The play space is connected to the main outdoor performance space through a series of stepping stones. But if you look closely, all the outdoor spaces are interconnected by footpath that also merges with the public accesses. At the bottom of the presentation board, we can see a section view which showcases details of the connections within the building, where you can see all the steel reinforcement along the ram earth walls, as well as the reinforcement in the traffic cable roof with a box cutter, showing the real connection between structures and different layers within the building structure and walls. We can also see the art space on the first floor and the restaurant at the bottom floor just under, with the external decking on the northern side, with people sitting on the northern elevated suspended decking. On the western side, we can see the outdoor art exhibition space, with footpath continuing towards the public access. Here are two digital drawings. The top one showing the traffic cable roof connections and details elements that goes within it, with a eave lining design, which shows a customized support brackets. At the bottom is the footing of the ram earth walls, showing different components and layers of the structure. The 3D render shows how the building is connected to the river from the land through the traffic cable roof. You can also see how the entrance is connected to the view of the horizon of the river towards the main centralities. On the right side of the render is the road, the public access to the main road, and from the main entrance is the access to the public entrance. On the left is another access to a small podium where cultural events can be carried on. On the top side of the presentation board, we can see a 3D sectional view which showcase the different elements and components that goes into this building, and really showing the soothing ram earth walls, how it flows with the topography and hides the concrete building behind. Can also see the timber louvers that's gonna help to control the natural daylight during hot summer days, and also the timber battens within the lounge area, which helps insulate the sound during the noisy times for the music learning space. You can also see the outdoor decking area for the restaurant facing towards the river. At the bottom of the presentation page is a view looking from the entrance towards Nerang River, really showcasing the elements of the timber battens that's on the ceiling and the outdoor performance space where people can freely spectate during the events. You can also see the stairway that goes towards the first floor with the ram earth walls, how it creates a coherent flow towards the whole building south side. You can also see the timber columns that supports the traffic cable roof on top. This is a view inside the library, showcasing the comcork walls with the natural earthy tones, keeping a very soothing and warm atmosphere within the library. We can also see the textured timber stamped concrete columns with a ram earth running alongside it.